Hello, and welcome to the weekly LinkedIn Live leadership series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kathy Eastwood, the host and CEO of Equals Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from across different generations, industries, styles, and experiences. Because there's no right way to be a leader. It is all about being authentic and bringing your real self to the table. Each week, when we meet our leaders, we're going to ask them what drives them. What's their unique leadership style? How have they adapted? What are some of their tips and tricks? So, before we get started, what I'd love to do is make sure we make this an interactive session. Please let us know where you're dialing in from. Tell us about what the weather is. So, is it warm or cold? Are you in autumn or are you in springtime? Get to know each other. This is an opportunity for everyone to network as well. So, with that, let me introduce our guest, Wendy Marder.
Hi.
So, Wendy is an exceptional leader. And I'll be honest, and I think I surprised her today. She may not have realized this, but nearly 2 decades ago, I had the pleasure of hiring Wendy as a sales consultant right as I stepped into a new managerial role. So, I was new to management, and I think you were one of my first hires, Wendy. So, and it's been great over these couple of decades, really, to watch your journey unfold from those early days and really become an executive responsible now for global sales and business operations and strategies. And I love thinking back from where you came from, and you really started a lot of your career was in consulting, right, with Deloitte. And when I think about it, consulting really equips us with a robust toolkit. And so when I think about what you brought to the team, it was your strategic thinking and problem solving. And I think these skills really have proven invaluable as you lead teams today and consistently enhancing operational efficiency and driving growth across various industries. So I don't want to keep doing that. I want to give you a chance to talk and introduce yourself, Wendy. So let me turn it over to you for a second tell us a little bit more on what you're up to these days and where your focus is.
Yeah. So after, as you mentioned, spending 10 plus years in management consulting and then switching over to pre-sales and then pre-sales operations and then sales operations. And I've had the opportunity to work in a variety of industries, both in enterprise and um, in SMB organizations. So I've seen the big, I've seen the small, and currently I am working with a consulting firm that is focusing on leadership development as well as OKR development and sales strategy.
Excellent. So you've kind of seen it all, right? Just the big, the small, the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, do you have a preference? Do you like working for the big companies or the small ones?
Both have their goods and bads. So with a big company, you have a lot more structure, you have a lot more resources that you can count on. With the small, there's the ability to make a big difference quickly. So I think both have their opportunities. With the big companies, I think you get the exposure to more people, more different types of things. But like I said, the small, you get to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond.
Yeah, I agree. I remember some of the days at HP of being in such a big company. Um, the stuff you have to go through, you really build a lot of experiences really quickly.
Yes.
And when I go work with other companies and they're like, I've never experienced anything like that. I'm like, oh my God, we've had every experience possible. And it really does help then apply it to the next situation that you're in.
It does, but then you think about the HP world, and there was infrastructure in place that kept you from being able to make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
So in an SMB, obviously, you're able to pivot faster, fail
Yeah.
fast, pivot fast.
Absolutely. So Wendy, we've talked a lot over the years, and you know my style. I say my tagline is I'm a nurturing driver. I love to get things done by caring for others. And my mission in life is really to inspire and enable others to accomplish things they didn't think are possible. And I always talk like my core values is no one wakes up in with bad intent. What's your leadership style? How do you show up and how do you share with others who you are and what you like to accomplish?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that I'm a transformational leader. I like to inspire others. I like to bring out the best in them. I like to inspire them by being positive, by bringing some of that positivity to them. And I definitely try to find what's best in them. It's maybe things that they didn't even know about themselves.
How do you go about that? How do you look for those things?
Asking questions. And it goes back to my tagline, which is you need to listen. Be a listen to understand, not to respond. And because of that, I'm always trying to listen to what somebody's interests are. I spend the time to actually not just get to their business goals, but also what is your personal goals. Let's figure out if we can change, if we can align some projects to you that are going to allow you to have those experiences.
Yeah, listening is so critical. Um, how much of it do you think you learn that consulting?
Um, I'm sorry, what did you ask?
I was asking how much do you think that listening skill, how much do you think comes from that initial consulting background that you have?
Yeah, I think it did come from the consulting background. You had to gather requirements, and back in the early days of consulting, back when I joined consulting, I should say, that was really all you had to go off of as an analyst. You and as a consultant, you spent time just gathering requirements and then mapping that to some type of technology or some type of process. And so I had to listen then. And so I guess that's what stayed with me. Also, what stayed with me was a statement that somebody had said to me early on, which was dress the part that you want, not the part that you have. So with that, I took, okay, every project was not going and every assignment was not going to be exactly what I wanted it to be. So what do I need out of this? Let me figure out how to get what I need.
I love that. Dress the part you want it to be. So, do you have an example of how you've applied that?
So I've applied that in a couple of different areas. I've had some roles in my life where it wasn't the role that I exactly wanted. Maybe it was a lesser role, or maybe it was something where, hey, I'm doing something that, it's not really where I see myself going. And so I've always looked for, okay, what can I get out of that? So an example of where I did that in leadership, I had an individual who was on my sales operations team. She wasn't necessarily a sales operations person. She didn't have any of the background in technology or process. And in speaking with her, she taught herself how to do Excel formulas. And so I pivoted that to, we were trying to do some better analytics. I pivoted that to Power BI. She took some online classes in DAX coding, and um, we actually created a role for her. So we found the right role for her. And it was only because I had listened to her. It wasn't exactly what I needed on my team, but we were able to find a role and create a role for her in the organization that better aligned with that once she had those skills.
That's amazing, right? Because I mean, that selfishly, well, it's really an unselfish act, right? In that situation, because you had this person, and I'm sure there was, okay, am I going to leave a position open? Am I leaving myself, right? But you're focusing on the individual as opposed to necessarily all your needs.
Right. And, honestly, you're absolutely correct on that one. I did leave myself in a lurch because, from a hiring perspective, small business, you can't start hiring until the person moves on. So, until she had moved on to her new role, I couldn't start the hiring process to get a replacement. And yeah, the rest of my team had to step up and fill in the gaps.
How did it make that person feel?
She felt empowered, actually. I mean, she's created a whole career for herself off of this, but it made her feel heard. It made her feel like she could do something. She came from a family where she was the underdog. Her sister was so much more had so many more experiences than she did. Her parents were really successful, and she felt like the underdog her entire life, and this made her feel like she could do anything.
Yeah, and that's the power we have as leaders, right? And as managers. And I think sometimes we forget about that is our primary role. Is the people that work for us are in our care. There's a term that Simon Sinek says is you're not in charge. You have to take care of those that are in your charge.
Yeah. And to build on that, one of the things, it is the respect and it is the communication of that. But I always try to remember these are humans. They have needs, and at the end of the day, they have a real life, and let's understand who they are. And actually, I kind of took some of that from you. You asked everybody on the team who is your who's your contact person if something were to happen, and put this all into your contact for that person. What is the name of their cat or their dog? What is the name of their spouse, their kids? And then who's their contact person if something were to go wrong? Who do I contact to find out what's going on with you?
All right, that was good advice. All right, thanks for that. It's funny. You know why I was big on that back in the day? I was living alone.
I
And
know,
we're
I so was I.
I was like, "Oh God, what happens if someone doesn't like if I don't show up from work? What's anyone going to do?"
Right,
So,
who know.
interesting. So, talk to me. Obviously, we learn a lot of these experiences, how to show up and things like that. Tell me about some of the best experiences you've had with past leaders, and also some of the worst.
Yeah, so I appreciate and I feel grateful for every experience that I've had, because I have worked for some great managers and leaders, and I've worked for some not so great ones. And each experience has given me something that I take with me, and I built my own style off of. So um, I've had ones that were really caring and wanted to know about me and wanted to help me grow. They looked at, okay, well, where are you? Where are you trying to get in your career? What is best for you in these experiences? And then I've worked for some people who, and some of those great things were owning my own behaviors. I'm responsible for me, and if I make a mistake, I need to own up to that mistake, and I instill that in other people too. We're all human. We make mistakes, and if you own up to it, we can move forward from that. But it's when you try to cover that up that it's not going to work. But some of the not so great managers, not listening to people, not inspiring people to want to work together or work for them. I think one of the biggest things, didn't take a not taking a pulse on what the audience or what their team was looking for, not understanding who they were, and not showing them respect in either the work that they were assigning, trying to micromanage tasks, not giving people opportunities.
Yeah, and that micromanagement one comes up quite a bit. Um, have you, in your experience, have you had a lot of micromanagers?
Unfortunately, yes. And my way of dealing with it when I have a micromanager is, what am I not doing? So in the past, and I will admit, I have not always been a great leader, and I've learned over time how to improve my leadership style. And it was not asking questions or not having them ask questions on what could be improved. And so owning that behavior, okay, well, let's talk about what you're looking for. What it was it that you needed? And let's understand this so that the next time we are on the same page and we do understand what we're looking for. There's never a bad work situation. It's all your perspective and what you're going to take out of it. Because I also I heard recently, I don't know that I ever heard this stat before, that most leaders don't get leadership training for 3 to 5 years or 3 to 10 years, something like that, before they've been in after they're put into a leadership position. And yeah, I mean, some of that is, yes, you should be in a leadership training class because you don't know this stuff off the bat. You don't know that, hey, my behaviors or what I'm doing is going to mimic it for other people. So if I don't take holidays, or when I'm on a holiday, I am doing work, then it doesn't matter that I've said don't work while you're on, that when you're out, my actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting as you're talking about like the behavior, you've seen your best bosses and your worst. So you're learning from them. But if you don't have that formal training, how do you know which is the best and the worst in some situations?
Right.
Right. And what is the expectations of management? I mean, unfortunately, you're absolutely right on this stat, and I don't have it on the tip of my tongue at the moment, but it is I think it's like 70% of people don't actually get management training. And it is usually your high performers that get promoted because they've done a fabulous job of being individual contributors. And they're like, oh, well, you should be able to lead other people. But it's a different job.
It is. And not everybody's meant to be a leader. And I use that word leader rather than manager because so I had a client say one time that they don't use the word leader because anybody can lead. But to me, the difference between a manager and a leader is somebody who's inspiring others. They're having that accountability, that integrity, and anybody can manage somebody else's work. So,
Yeah, no, it's a great. I've been talking about this a lot lately on social media. The way I've been helping position it is management is about what you need to do. Here's the task. These are the things you have to do, right? And you have to manage. If you're a people manager, there's a lot of things you have to do. You have to attract, you have to hire, you have to onboard, you have to do performance management. That's the what of management. And then the leadership, as you say, is really how do you lead your team, right? And you have a choice. You can be authoritative, and tell people what to do, or you could be very hands off, or you could be coaching, right? There's a lot of different styles. And I think you and I are very similar. We're very people focused. How do we inspire and enable people to accomplish what they're doing?
yep.
I
And I
want
see that Carrie asked the question of what specifically I did to improve my leadership and management skills. And so I'll bring up that one of the things that I did is I did a lot of self reflection, which caused me to want to get my master's degree in IO psychology. And it seems like a weird thing for somebody to do when they're not going to be doing HR or anything in that field. And so, yes, as a strategy and operations manager, I wanted to focus on IO psychology because the part where I felt like I needed some additional assistance was around understanding people, understanding what they're really saying, reading a room, understanding what past behaviors or past experiences, even as far back as childhood, have done to people. And
to.
then taking that into account when giving them assignments, understanding what they want to do. So that's some of the things that I've done.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've got so many questions on this one. If I am correct in remembering all this, you have a lot of blue energy. You like the data, you like the operations, you like the structure, correct?
Started out in data warehousing, so yes, I'm a data person.
Yep. And I think when you look at, you're very good at that operational focus, and to have that awareness and that self-reflection to know, okay, the people side of it is, I know it's important, but that's not my natural tendency. Right. So my natural tendency is the people side of things. That's, I've got a lot of red energy, a lot of yellow energy. And the operations stuff is, I can do it and I'm pretty good at it, but it drains the crap out of me. Right.
Somebody asked me the other day, what is your superpower? And my superpower is that I can listen to a situation, I can gather the requirements, and I can usually find that solution very quickly into that. But sometimes that's perceived incorrectly because I'm one step ahead of where everybody else is. And so it was learning about myself to slow down a little bit and let other people catch up.
Yeah. Cause you're coming from a logical point of view.
Yeah,
Right. But emotions play a huge
they do.
part on how we show up, why we show up, why we're going to do something.
Right.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and they're like, I don't think their profile is right. And we started getting into the conversation like, well, what happened in the past? Right? Were they fired because they didn't do something exactly right? Were they, ridiculed? Were they bullied? Were they, whatever the things are that really impacts how you show up at work?
Yeah. I mean, it could have just been something that happened in their school days where they were disciplined for something that they did, and they now take that into everything that they do. So it's really important to understand and take a step back, because if somebody's not understanding where you're coming from, pivot quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talk about that a lot with the E3 leadership code, where really expressing the end vision. Where are we going, right? So people understand that vision, because folks like you and I can be very operate. We get it, right? But you got to paint that picture for people, and
Yes.
get them excited about it and step out of their own stuff along that way. Um, what other? So we have a question coming in from Ralph. So I'm just gonna. I haven't even read this yet. So, question about your background. Have you found that the exposure to large companies has helped you inform, offer insights or ideas to the smaller businesses that you've worked with? Or are the two so different that it doesn't apply? And do you manage the same way within different structures?
So I don't manage the same way within both structures. However, things that I've learned in the large companies have then been able to translate. So I figure out which parts of it I can take and apply. Sometimes in the smaller organizations, they're not ready for that, or it's too much structure for them, and we need to be a little bit looser. Let's talk about when you're doing some of those processes. Sometimes it's too many steps or too many levels of approvals in a smaller organization. So I've taken what I have learned in those large organizations and then scaled it to apply to those small. And then definitely from the leadership perspective, have taken pretty much everything. I mean, everything that I do, everything that I've experienced, I take into my day to day. And that includes um, I bring meditation to everybody. So I will say, even if you're not ready to actually meditate, take a couple of minutes and take some deep breaths. I actually probably even said that to you at some point. Okay, take the deep breaths in, the deep breaths out, and it relaxes you and it allows you to just clear your mind.
Yeah. And that's the power of having different energies on a team, right? Because you know me, I'm running to the fire, I'm going fast, and you're like, whoa, Kath, come back, let's go, let's take a breath, let's figure out what's happening. And having that complement to your own energy, I think, is so powerful. So I love that, because it's hard for me sometimes to implement myself, but I love when I've got a partner with me that can help remind me and the team. So,
Absolutely. And you know what? I mean, there are times in my career when I have gotten so busy that I will forego. I will say, oh my gosh, I don't have time to meditate today. And I find that my energy is off all day long if I don't do it. So even if I can't do a long one, at least taking the time to do a short one. And everybody's got to find their thing, whether it be exercise, whether it be meditation, whether it just be playing a game for a couple of minutes. But everybody has to find their thing that is their turn off point where they turn the brain off for a little bit.
yeah, and that's powerful because it feels sometimes, knowing myself, sometimes I'll sit there for hours, and I'm sure my husband is listening to this going, "Oh yeah, she can." And it's amazing how you think, "Oh, I'm just one more thing, one more thing, one more thing." You're not actually as productive. And when you can step away, get perspective again, and come back into the space, you can get done the work that much quicker because now you're in a better frame of mind.
Absolutely.
That's great. So, question for you. You said this a while back, and um, you realized at some point you weren't a great leader. How did you come to that realization?
So, um, I, I guess I came to that realization because I was listening too much to a not so great boss, somebody who wasn't supportive of the team, who was making me into the bad guy. So I would call myself a middle manager where I had a leader who was pretty important in the company who would tell me, "Hey, this is what we need to do." And even if I disagreed, I would tell him I disagreed, but then we'd have to go with that person's approach. And I took some of that and I would roll it out to the team. But then that person would then change their mind and or would tell the team something different, and it made me the bad guy. And I realized, you know what? You got to be true to yourself, and you got to be true to, if this doesn't feel right, then push back and find a way to get that person to hear you as opposed to doing this. Because I pushed out some things to my team that I wouldn't want to do. And as a leader, never give your team something that you wouldn't want to do yourself or you would feel uncomfortable with doing. Even if it's the level of reporting or the level of communication, if it's something that's going to be busy work and create more tasks for them, let's figure out a better way to do it. Let's talk about it as a team and figure out what are we trying to accomplish and what is the best way to do it. And I think the other thing was, it comes back to the listening, and it again was when I started to do that self-reflection. I didn't feel like I was listening enough to understand where they were coming from. You don't know where the next great idea is going to come from, and it often does come from that entry level or junior person on the team.
Yeah, that place of innocence, right? The person that's like, "Why are we doing this? Why can't we just do X?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't know because we always did it that way."
It's funny because I worked at a company where that was the mode of operation, was because that's the way we've always done it. And I've always come into every environment and said, I hate those words. We don't do things just because it's the way we've always done it. But it's the what I've taken away from my consulting world. I always say I loved when I was a consultant because I didn't become part of the problem. I didn't I was able to give a fresh perspective. So I've always treated every role that same way. I'm here to give you a fresh perspective. I'm going to give you the other side of the coin because I don't want to I don't want to be part of that problem. I don't want to because we've always done it. But you know what? When we're busy and there's a lot of things, sometimes we fall back on that and we need that junior person to say, "Oh, why?"
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much in that. You're absolutely right, and it goes back to, if you look at, only 10% of people accomplish their goals, and unfortunately, too much of the time is they're not identifying that, where are we getting to, and they're just trying to transactionally do the next, this is how we've done it. And you really have to step out of that transaction to look further, because that's when people can say, well, we don't have to take step A, B, and C. We really could do 1 and 10 and we're surpassed the goal.
Right.
And you're like, oh, all right. But I will say there was something else you said. Sometimes as a leader, though, sometimes there can be a point where you have to make a decision, right? And say, this is what we have to do. This is why. This is what I need you to do. And but you're putting the why, right? And that's
And that's the difference. You hit the nail on the head there. It's the why.
yeah,
So I'm willing to talk about anything, but there is a point where, okay, we've discussed this and I now need to make a decision. So it may not be the decision that you wanted. And I need you to now get on the boat. We've talked about it, and now you're either on the boat or you're off the boat.
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, my catalyst was almost identical to you when I was working for a boss and I found myself say, I don't know why, just do it. And I said, I'm out, because my style is not like that. And that's not who I want to be. And I can't work that way.
Exactly. That's exactly what I did. I walked away from the situation because I realized, you know what, this is not authentically, this does not feel like me, and I don't want to be that way. So let me find something that is going to more align to where I get up every morning and I am proud to do what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, Wendy, that sounds like an absolutely perfect place to stop. It's all about being the authentic you, right? Finding your own voice, your own power. And, I just really want to thank you for your time here today and helping inspire people. You're bringing different ideas to the table, like meditation, which some people might think is taboo, but it's so powerful when you bring it in. um, Being a transformational leader, I heard a lot of listening, right? That is a superpower in there. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that you share this and bring this to the table. So, any last advice you would have for people thinking about leadership and where they're going?
Um, yeah, I guess figure out what your non-negotiables are, and you know, and stay true to who you are and inspire others.
I love it. Thank you so much. And with that, Wendy just set it up perfectly. If you want to learn more, we actually have a module, the self awareness module, which allows you to go through and understand what are your values, what are your non negotiables, what's your mission and your vision. Because when you can share that with others, they then understand how to better work with you, and then you can better work with them. And you can inspire and enable anyone to achieve greatness, just like Wendy has been doing for years. Thanks so much, Wendy. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon. Take
I
care.